I think one of them is that be humble. You try to keep an even keel. You're going to walk off the field sometimes, and especially when you're younger. But as you gain more experience, you kind of feel like a little bulletproof, right? Things are going good, and man, you're nailing it. Baseball, sports is humbling, and especially officiating. It can bring you down to your knees, and so you got to be humble. Try to keep an even keel, and then a couple mentors really said, listen, there's more to umpiring than on field. You represent MLB, you represent your family, and you need to be a good person off the field. You need to a major league umpire is just not ball strikes, safes, and outs. And so I thought that was very good advice. And then last piece of advice that I wrote down that I remembered is it's over in a blink of an eye. I think Dana, when we first got on here, I said, man, how long has it been since I saw you? And then, man, in all aspects of my life, I'm kind of at that time in my life, I'm looking back on things. I'm like, man, where did it go? So, enjoy it. Enjoy it while you can.
I think a lifelong umpire can say just to see the joy in I can see the joy in the kids, like when I was doing, little league and high school and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed that aspect. I really did enjoy their parents because we all know the parents are the worst, but seeing the kids enjoy the game and now at the major league level, I really enjoy seeing the fans interacting. Like seeing the kids just enjoy it. A lot of times if I get a baseball, I'll walk over to the line and I'll hand the kid a baseball and I'll tell them, I said, I'm going to give you this baseball, but you got to make me a deal. And they kind of look up at me and they're like, what? Say, okay. I'm like, okay, if I give you this baseball, you can't ever yell at an umpire ever again. And their parents usually laugh, but just seeing the joy of them getting a baseball and them enjoying the game. I really enjoy that. My joy is my profession. Like Mike said, I enjoy it. I enjoy going on the field still and trying to do the best of my abilities and at a high level. And one day, very fast, like Mike said, it's going to be very soon for me that I'll be retiring, and that will not happen anymore. But I'm not ready yet. But I still love to do what I do, and I guess that's just see the joy of I just enjoy the game of baseball.
There's a lot of camps you can go to. There's a huge shortage of officials that we know that. And so, if that's what you want to try to get your, get your feet and get wet in it, the opportunities are there. And the way it's set up now, MLB has 5 to 6 camps in the season, that I'll be glad to give a plug out. Just not a plug. It's just it's just a website. If you're interested, you can go to 5 or 6. You can go to one of these camps, and you go there, and you can be considered for a spot to go to the umpire school that they run. And then, of course, Hunter Wendelstadt still runs his school. There are tons of camps. There's tons of opportunities. It's just the fact that you've got to be willing to dip your toe in it. And it's not going to be. It's not going to be one of those things where you come home and go, man, you might, but there's going to be some times where you're like, why would I want to do this and get yelled at by parents? And that's why I think the mentorship thing is really key to get younger people involved in officiating. But hey, listen, look at Aztec, Las Cruces. We made it. Anybody, you can do it. We're prime examples of that.
And now, episode 14, letter M, mentorship. Join hosts Dana Pappas and Nate Acosta with special guests Mike Everitt and Doug Eddings on the From A to Zebra podcast.
Welcome back to the From A to Zebra podcast. I'm Dana Pappas, back with my co-host Nate Acosta. We're excited that this episode features 2 outstanding guests, finally, from the baseball diamond.
On today's episode, we are covering the letter M, and our guest will be talking with us about mentorship. We are looking forward to the conversation about the importance of mentorship in officiating and so much more.
Our guests today are current Major League Baseball umpire Doug Eddings and retired Major League Baseball umpire and current MLB umpire supervisor Mike Everitt. Before we get started, can you both tell us just a little bit about your umpiring journeys, where you got started, how you got started, and where you are today? Mike, we'll start with you.
Yeah. First of all, Dana, thanks for having us. Nate, appreciate it. Good to see everybody. It's good to see some faces that I haven't seen in a long time. So my story is kind of like, a small town in New Mexico and kind of a sport hound. But I was 12 years old. I was, our little league field had 4 fields. Someone came over to the field after our game and said, we need an umpire for the 8-year-olds. And at 12 years old, a kid, we all put our head down, not interested. And the gentleman said, I'll give you a hot dog and a Coke. And I just really quickly ran over to the field 1, where I experienced umpiring my first game as a 12-year-old. And then, it's funny, we're talking about mentorship, but met an older gentleman that kind of took me under his wings there, and they actually started paying me $5 the next season to start doing more Little League games. And that's kind of how I, got started, and then continued to officiate even different sports like, basketball and baseball. And then, went to New Mexico State on a music scholarship. I did not play football. I took that part of the season off. And worked at the intramural department for another person who's kind of mentored me, Mr. Paul Laporte. And, to be quite honest, my transcripts were bouncing all over the place, and I wasn't doing what I needed to be doing. I was going to teach and coach. That was my dream. But then, I also met another gentleman that we all know, Mike Rundell, from New Mexico, and he had told me that you ought to look into umpire school. And not knowing what that even meant, and we didn't have internet at that time. So I wrote both umpire schools that was up and running, got some information on it, and, on a whim, just kind of told my father at the time, hey, listen, I want to try something. And the big joke at our house was, how many more semesters do you have before you graduate? And after 2 years of saying 3 more semesters, my dad kind of got tired of that. And said, something, if this is what you want and this is kind of your dream, then I think you ought to go for it. So I hopped in a 1978 Mercury Monarch and headed from Aztec, New Mexico to Daytona Beach, Florida, for umpire school in 86, 87 maybe. Yeah, 87. Okay. So then, luckily made it out of there and got started getting my career started in the minor league. In the minor league side. So that's kind of how I got going. And throughout that, I can, looking back on my career and looking back on how that journey and developed, I can see many mentors that were in my life that at the time, and I didn't even know it. And, it's funny to say one of those people that is one of those persons that, as we made through the minor leagues and the major leagues, Doug Eddings. And he's a dear friend and somebody that's always encouraged me and showed me that the joy and the what doing something you enjoy and doing it to the best of your ability. So that's kind of my story.
Thank you, Mike. Doug, you're up next.
Wow, that's a little crazy that Mike and I's story is very, very similar. And the funny thing is, I believe that Mike and I are the only New Mexicans that ever made the major leagues. So that is kind of unique. And the story is kind of similar. Like Mike, I love playing the game of baseball. I played all sports, really enjoyed it. I believe I was probably about the same age as Mike, probably 12 or 13 years old. My mom was kind of involved with the Little League, and I had just gotten done playing some games that day, and she said, hey, we need some help. Some umpires didn't show up, and you're going to have to umpire. And I'm like, I'm not going to umpire. Nobody likes umpires. Like, I don't want to umpire. So she's like, yeah, you're going to do it, mister. So I ended up doing like 2 or 3 games. And afterwards, I got $20, $30, a lot more than Mike made. But I grew up in Las Cruces, New Mexico. So I guess the budget was a little bit bigger. But that's how I started my journey of umpiring. I really actually enjoyed it that day. And I'm like, hey, you can make some money doing this. And so I started on the side, always umpiring and playing baseball. At the high school level, I was at the high school team and did games for extra money. My parents didn't make a lot of money, so I kind of like helped them out with some extra spending cash. So that was kind of neat. And then one day I read how you had to go to umpire school and all that. And I had found out this was back in 1988. And the reason why I know Mike Everett went to umpire school in 87 is because I heard there was a fellow that is at New Mexico State, and we know the same people. Paul Laporte said, you should call Mike Everitt and just kind of, talk to him and see what he thinks. And sure enough, I remember that phone call. I called him at his home in Aztec, and Mike just gave me some great advice going into umpire school. He really did. And Mike, I feel the same with Mike. He's been a big time mentor to me, not only on the field, doing my craft, but off the field. He's just been a tremendous help. I don't think I would have gotten to where I am without him or that talk about going to umpire school. So I went to 1989, and that was my journey. And like I said, mentors had so many, like Paul Laporte, even Mike Rendell. He's down here in Cruces. God rest his soul. He passed away on us last year, I believe. And anyways, he was a very good mentor towards me. And just all throughout, you need that, like going through the levels in the minor leagues that you need. You don't realize it at the time. You might realize that like maybe they're being hard on you or being bossy. But when you look back on it, you had a lot of mentors, like Mike said, that you just didn't really realize until you got a little bit older.
It's both of you actually mentioned one name or two names actually really that are huge, just staples in New Mexico, and that's Paul Laporte and Mike Rendell. And we joke about it because there's not an official in New Mexico right now that hasn't run through Paul Laporte's program at some point or was mentored by Paul Laporte either directly or indirectly. And so it's really cool to see that we have two major league umpires on here that were mentored by Paul Laporte. We have Division I basketball referees and softball umpires, and it's really cool. So this is that shout out to Paul Laporte. I know we've dropped his name a few times, and yes, again, Mike Rendell also on that same category. But before we get into our topics of the day, both of you have worked multiple World Series. Doug, you're just coming fresh off this year's World Series, kind of, a big one, right? Two icon teams, the New York Yankees, LA Dodgers, kind of tell us what that process is like, both of you, not just this past World Series, previous World Series, what that process is like, what it feels like to get the call, and of course, just the experience itself. And Doug, you can start on that one.
Yeah, I think when you start, when you get your full-time job as a major league umpire, you just want to get there. You want to get to the major leagues and get yourself established. After a few years, you want to work playoffs. You want to, kind of blend in and just look through the whole process. And, after 10, 15 years, you're looking for your first World Series. I wasn't as fortunate as like Mike and some of them, which is fine. I didn't get my first World Series till my 20th year in the major leagues. That was in 2019. I still can remember yesterday on a Sunday afternoon, Joe Torre was our boss. Him give me a call, letting me know that I received my first World Series, which was with the Washington Nationals against the Houston Astros. So that was really, really exciting. It was exciting for myself professionally, but also as far as my family and my friends, just so they can enjoy it too. And that was awesome. And then coming full circle this year, I'm getting a call. It was kind of out of the blue. I know I had a good year. And again, you want to be recognized for your year, but I'm getting the call and receiving the World Series this year was even more of a shock, I would say. It still hasn't set in because it's been fresh. It was, like you said, two icon teams. It was big. You could tell being in Dodger Stadium and Yankee Stadium. Mike's been there many, many times. Just it was a different animal. It was the crowd was electric and it was exciting. But not only that, it was exciting for my family again to experience that. I have a 8-year-old daughter that when she went to my first one, she was only 3. So she really didn't remember any of that. So it was kind of special for her to be there. So my daughter, Maya Lou, got to really enjoy all that, and my wife and all my family and friends. So that was exciting for them. And it's just a good time to experience, it's a pressure situation because you got to be at your best. But actually it's kind of a relief because now you're at that point where the end of the season, you got rewarded the World Series. So you just let what you've done in the past, like just do your job, and do it to the best of you can do it.
So I do have to ask. Obviously we don't, we're pretty unbiased when we go out and officiate or we umpire. But, that Grand Slam, like how was the ground shaking? How intense was Dodger Stadium when that happened?
Yeah, like I said, I've always said Philly is the loudest place I've been, but with this Dodger Stadium, when he hit that you're right. It felt like the ground was shaking, Nate. It was unbelievable. I mean, when they tied it up, I was like, we can't put a runner on second base anymore. We might be going 13, 14 innings, but when he hit that, I was like, wow, that was amazing.
And as a Yankees fan, obviously, I will be able to tell my grandkids if that ever happens, that was probably one of the greatest baseball games of all time. And so to be a part of that as an umpire has got to be amazing. And so that's pretty cool. So Mike.
Yeah, well, first of all, I was very blessed. I was able to work 3 World Series, and only one of those World Series I worked the plate. And so, you don't know, depending on what the rotation is, if you're going to work the plate. As Doug said earlier, I think, when you look back on it, of course, when you go to umpire school, you just want to get in the minor leagues, right? But then you soon find out that, hey, yeah, I want to get out of rookie ball. I want to go to A ball. Then I want to go to double A. Then I want to go to triple A. And then, then you're knocking on the door. And when you finally make it, if we're just so blessed to be able to make it, is the fact that then you just you think you fulfilled your overall goal, right, of being a major league umpire. But then you want to, you want to get settled in, and then you want to work your first playoff game. And then you want to work another playoff game. Then you have to work. We kind of have a system where you need to work a league championship series and a division series before you're considered for the World Series. And, now looking back on it in my position now and being on being part of the selection team to come up with who works, it's very difficult. It's very difficult to pick a crew of World Series umpires when you have 76, and not all 76 are eligible, but man, you have the best of the best, right? And you're trying to get a crew together that will represent baseball, that will do the best they can. And so being able to see that as the office side, and then being an umpire on the field side, it's really, really gratifying to watch, for me personally, to watch umpires work to get selected as their first World Series. And you want that. That's what you want, a World Series. So, my World Series, I just remember they're done like a flash of a blink of an eye. I mean, you get called, and I felt overwhelmed when I first got called. I'm like, holy cow, you're trying to figure out things for your family, your friends, and then you've got to work. And you're trying to balance all of that. But once you're on the field, I just remember, I think it was Chuck Merriweather, God bless him. He used to be just a wonderful, great mentor and a great umpire at major league level. And I remember him one time, I worked my first World Series with him, and it was Boston and Colorado. And we were at Fenway Park, and in between innings, he said, look at the, the big monster there. And they have the scoreboard of every game, right, that's going on, and they put it up manually with their, somebody behind there. And he goes, we're the only game on now. And so I said, holy cow, Chuck, yep, that's true. So I don't know, you look back on it, there are a lot of good memories, a lot of good crew memories, but that's kind of my recollection. And being on the office side of it, it's a difficult process, but it's so gratifying to see somebody like a Doug Eddings. As he said, he waited a long time to work his first and deservingly got to work his second this past year.
Thanks for picking me, Mike.
So you
Pleasure.
both kind of alluded to this. You got started, both of you, in New Mexico, and you've ascended, obviously, to the highest levels of baseball umpiring. New Mexico's really only had a handful of officials in all sports who have gotten to officiate in professional leagues. The two of you, Land Clark, Lloyd McPeters, and on the NFL side of things. So kind of as an aspirational token of knowledge, what can you tell officials in smaller states about what it takes to ascend through the ranks when you're a little bit geographically challenged. I know there's people that are in rural areas and smaller states that don't have professional sports. What can you tell those officials who are wanting to follow in your footsteps? Mike, we'll start with you this time.
Well, I would simply say, look, you got somebody on from Aztec, New Mexico, and Las Cruces, New Mexico, 400 miles apart. And Aztec is a very small town. Las Cruces, of course, a little bit bigger, but hey, your dreams can come true as well, right? But in today's world now, I mean, listen, there's a lot of opportunities because now we have social media on there. Listen, there's a lot of camps you can go to. There's a huge shortage of officials that we know that. And so, if that's what you want to try to get your, get your feet and get wet in it, I mean, the opportunities are there. And the way it's set up now, MLB has 5 to 6 camps in the season, that I'll be glad to give a plug out. Just not a plug. It's just it's just a website. If you're interested, you can go to 5 or 6. You can go to one of these camps, and you go there, and you can be considered for a spot to go to the umpire school that they run. And then, of course, Hunter Wendelstadt still runs his school. There are tons of camps. There's tons of opportunities. It's just the fact that you've got to be willing to dip your toe in it, and it's not going to be one of those things where you come home and go, man, you might, but there's going to be some times where you're like, why would I want to do this and get yelled at by parents? And that's why I think the mentorship thing is really key to get younger people involved in officiating. But hey, listen, look at Aztec, Las Cruces. We made it. Anybody, I mean, you can do it. We're prime examples of that.
Absolutely. And you mentioned something about mentorship, and we'll talk a little bit more about mentorship, but you can dip your toes in and you can make it from small town America, but the process is not easy. And that's in any sport. I think that the work that you have to put in, you can go to these camps and the opportunities are there, but the process is going to be hard, and you're going to need those mentors, and you're going to need the people that, are helping you get through the process, because there are going to be days that, and I'm sure both of you guys experience, where, hey, maybe this isn't for me. Maybe this is something that, it's time for me to, stop driving all over the country, for $125, to umpire a game and go back and get a job and do these things. And so I'm sure it was mentorship that kind of helped you through that process and kept you going. But Mike, with a 21-year career on the field, how hard was your transition into becoming a supervisor?
Yeah, it was difficult, and there's still challenges for me. I'm not sure how much longer I'm going to do it, but I transitioned off the field. I was very, very lucky, and again, this word keeps on coming up. I was very blessed. You have a choice when you see your career winding down, kind of mapping out what you want to do. And I just felt like it was time for me to come off the field. I kind of retired from on field at a semi-early age, 55. Most wait till they're 62. But hey, listen, if you love what you're doing and you're still doing it, that's what you should do. But my biggest challenge was evaluating my former colleagues, walking into the locker room, and that locker room not being the same locker room that I was used to being walking in. I still do miss that a lot. Miss the friendships. I miss the camaraderie. I miss the card playing before the games. I miss, before the game saying a little prayer and then going out and doing the best you can, and knowing that, hey, it's 4 against 50, and we're gonna go out there. We're gonna do this thing, and when we come back in, we're gonna hug it out. If it was a tough game, we're gonna encourage each other. So I guess that's what I've tried to do as a supervisor, in the fact that I do know how tough it is. And I told myself and I told others that if I ever become a supervisor who forgets how difficult the job is, and then it's time for me to retire. And so I try to handle that in a different way as a supervisor. Honestly, writing evaluations on former colleagues. And then I thoroughly enjoy going to the AAA level and looking at younger prospects. But the major league level, we have 76 different personalities and type A personalities, and I've learned that trying to maneuver that. At the same time, just be myself, right? That has been a big challenge for me.
That definitely is always interesting, just in talking to officials in different sports about moving from on the field to in the office, and how you're received by your colleagues and all of that. It's definitely, I think that's where the mentorship element does come back in, because there are some of those relationships already that might ease some of that. So, we've talked a little bit about it already, but I'd like you guys to kind of expand on the question of the day, the word of the day, mentorship. So how important is mentorship in officiating? And you've already talked a little bit about who your umpiring mentors are or were. So if you can expand on that a little bit, both of you. Will start with Doug this time.
That's really good. Like it just made me start thinking about mentorship. We kind of call it sometimes seniority at our level, where more senior person down the line, or maybe an older person officiating basketball or football, takes you on your wing, and that's mentorship. Same at our level. With Mike Everitt, like him going to be a supervisor. I'm not just saying this because I already worked the World Series, but he's a great mentor because he is very well liked. He is very respected. He worked at the highest level, and he's worked under the scrutiny that we're at right now. So when he talks to me or any of us, we understand, because he gets it, and he gets it because he's been there. And when he gets the pressure, he gets the pressures of missing calls or missing something. So when he says something, it's coming from someone that realizes that. I'm not a full-time crew chief. And I'm hoping to be one real soon. But I got to work probably most 2/3 of the season as a crew chief, and I really enjoyed that. Most of the time I was with either a AAA umpire coming up and down, or a couple of young umpires, which it was great. Like Mike said, camaraderie, talking about plays before the game, talking about positioning before the game. That's really important. And then after the game, if something went on or whatever, situation with positioning, I really enjoyed that. And I really enjoy the talk with that. But even hand in hand, I mean, even after 26 years in the major leagues, there's always, I don't know everything. And when something comes up and something cuckoo happens on the field, and as a young umpire might have a good perspective of that. And I got to learn from that too. And I have to take that in, like, hey, that you know what, that is good. And so just because I have all these years, it doesn't mean that I know everything. I have to open up, and we're all together as a team on the field, as a crew, and that's the way we work. And so I think with the seniority and going down the line, no matter what sport you're in, it's great to hear feedback and having a mentor. But hand in hand, if you have something to say as a young umpire official, it's good to talk about too. If you have something different on positioning, different on a play, it's good to talk.
And Mike, same question to you.
Yeah, well, listen, when I received, the invitation for this and received this question, I kind of gave it some thought. Like I said, I mean, listen, when I was 12 years old, I had a mentor and I didn't even know it, right? It wasn't the guy that said he was going to give me a hot dog and a Coke. It was a guy who said, I need an umpire, and this is how you should do it. And I'm like, okay. But, I think that throughout if I'm looking back on this, there's a few guys really stand out, and I'm sure Doug can agree to this guy that I'm about to bring up. It was Marty Springstead. Marty Springstead was a 20-year major league umpire at the American League, and then he became a supervisor. And here's a guy, man, he could tell a story, and he could relate to each individual umpire. He was very encouraging. He didn't give up on me in some of the times where somebody else would have. I guarantee you that, through some tough games, and especially when I was going up and down between AAA and the big leagues. He didn't give up on me. What he did in his own way was he put his arms around me and said, hey, I believe in you, but we got to go to work. I mean, we got some improvements to make, and I'm going to send you to who I think I need to send it to, and you're going to work on those things, and we're going to see how it goes. And so, man, to have someone believe in you, that's huge as a mentor. To have someone not give up on you and just say, I think you're a major league umpire, but at the same time, put a spur in you and go, you got to go to work. And then being able to put you with, a crew chief. And at that time, that crew chief to me was Richie Garcia. I mean, he helped me out tremendously. And then, I can go down the list, like, Phil Jansen was a big help, Tim Welke, Larry Young, Jerry Crawford, John Shulock, Tim McClellan. They all had, I think Doug touched on it, like, each person has different strengths, right? And that's why you have a crew. And, some people are really, really good at like, not, we know the rules, but like they can just spout them off, right? Like it'll come to them. While other people are really good at being able to put those rules when things happen on the field. Some people might be really good at diffusing heated situations. As a crew chief, as Doug knows, you've got to have that crew if you get into a situation where, you've got something you've got to make a decision on. It is so important to have those three crewmates and their input and to just kind of work as a crew. So, and some mentors really are hard. Some they don't want to hug it out. They're going to tell you, man, you stunk it up. I had one of them tell me, Jerry Crawford, and you were horrible. We're not going to go. That's not going to happen. And as a young umpire, I mean, I had to bow up, and I didn't really appreciate it at the time, but that was his personality, right? And so you can take something from each person and you can look back on it and go, just like it was when I was a kid. My parents didn't become smart until I was 25. Okay. And then I realized they were pretty smart. It just took me a while, and I've matured at a different level, at a different speed. But man, if I wouldn't have all those mentors, if we don't have it, you don't develop your career. You don't develop, you get stagnant in a hurry. So that's what I got.
Yeah, that kind of leads into our next question. And I think that, you touched on some mentors are really helpful. They're educational. Some people, some mentors are super hard on you. Doug, we'll start with you. What is the best advice that any mentor ever gave you?
That's a good one, Nate. And I read that too. I think, and Mike will laugh at this one because he knows me through and through. I think it's just sometimes you just got to be yourself. And with me, sometimes being myself is a little too much when I was on the field, especially when I was younger, meaning that I just needed it toned down a little bit. Really didn't realize that till like actually what Mike said about his parents. I really didn't, when he said, just be yourself, be who I am, who the person I am, and not the people that think they want me to be, but who I am. And I realized that down the line and the funny thing is I had a Jerry Crawford a whole year where he was a type, like, again, he was tough on you. And at the time you thought, wow, that's a little brutal, but you look back on it, it made me a better umpire. So I think that the best thing, is just be yourself and know who you are as an official. Don't be like somebody else. Don't be a Jerry Crawford. Don't be somebody, even your mentor. You don't have to be like them. You have to be like yourself and pick and choose from these different mentors and be the best official you can be and be true, like how you should be.
And Mike, how about you? What's the best advice that you ever got from one of your mentors?
Well, I think one of them is that be humble. You try to keep an even keel. You're going to walk off the field sometimes, and especially when you're younger. But as you gain more experience, you kind of feel like a little bulletproof, right? Things are going good, and man, you're nailing it. Baseball, sports is humbling, and especially officiating. It can bring you down to your knees, and so you got to be humble. Try to keep an even keel, and then a couple mentors really said, listen, there's more to umpiring than on field. You represent MLB, you represent your family, and you need to be a good person off the field. You need to. A major league umpire is just not ball strikes, safes, and outs. And so I thought that was very good advice. And then last piece of advice that I wrote down that I remembered is like, it's over in a blink of an eye. I think Dana, when we first got on here, I said, man, how long has it been since I saw you? And then, in all aspects of my life, I'm kind of at that time in my life, I'm looking back on things. I'm like, man, where did it go? So, enjoy it while you can, and know it's going to be challenging, and stay humble, and as Doug said, be yourself, but also know that, you got to mature as your career goes on, and that will happen if you wanted to.
I always like to talk about, as a basketball official, my big mentor is the great Jack Jones. His advice to me was always make everyone around you feel comfortable, and your games are going to go smooth. You're going to have a lot more fun. You're going to get a lot more out of this, when, people enjoy being around you and comfortable. And that's, knowing the rules. That's, knowing how to handle situations. But, when he first introduced that to me, I mean, it was, oh, okay, cool. Let me be everybody's friend. Not necessarily. It was more of just be that person that somebody can always count on. And so, I always like to share that as, one of the greatest things that any mentor's ever told me. And that was just make your crew feel comfortable.
Nate, real quickly,
Yeah.
I mean, I remember early on, of course, before social media, I had a major league umpire say, when you're in that town, never pick up the local paper the next morning. Headline's not gonna be Mike Everitt was superb. He was
The umpires nailed it.
right. Like, wow, I wish this crew did our games all year. And
Yeah.
so now, really, as in position I'm in, I try to tell younger umpires, but it's virtually impossible. But man, I wish they've got to stay off social media. Like, social media is brutal.
Oh my
And
gosh.
I hate to see umpires walk off the field and not even take their shin guards off and look at their phones, because I know they're not looking at a message from their family sometimes. And I'm like, God, like that's not sustainable, man. It's not sustainable for your mental health or anything. So I really think that's important.
That is great advice because it's everywhere. And of course, everybody's an expert about officiating and umpiring, and everybody's got an opinion, and it is all over any social media platform. And it's even as somebody in my role who I'm just a support and advocate for officials, I can't stand it. I do get so upset because I get what's going on behind the scenes with officials, and to see people they're insulting people's mothers for a call that was made. And I'm like, what are we doing? It's just, that's great advice, and much appreciated. So, at our level, at the high school level, we're talking a lot, of course, about retention of officials. And one of the elements that we feel is really critical to keeping officials in is mentorship. So can you both kind of share some thoughts about what you feel like are the most important elements of having an effective mentor-mentee relationship? Like, if we're going to have people with mentors, what does that look like? What are things that are really imperative in having a mentor and mentee? Doug, we'll start with you.
Well, first of all, I think first and foremost, you need to have those people wanting to be mentors. I mean, you're going to have people that want to be mentors, because there's some people that they're not. And when you talk about a mentor, you're talking about a leader, and you're talking about a leader that is going to take either somebody by the way they want to do things or the way they may see things. And if it's, again, you wanted to have the right leaders. When we talk about the Jerry Crawfords and we're talking about the other ones, even when Jerry Crawford was hard, but he was a mentor. He was a leader, and that when he spoke, you listen. So I think first and foremost, like the people that you get, you got to make sure that they're leaders and they're positive, that to retain officials, that they've got to enjoy this officiating, basketball, football, or baseball, whatever it is. They have to enjoy it. And enjoying it is not only just on the field or on the court, it's off the court, the talk. There's so many times, even when I was a young official, or even now, like when I go to spring training, when I think about it, we have so many young umpires that are working the games. After the game or before the game, just really enjoy talking to them and enjoy asking about their families, asking where they're from or what they like to do. After the game, I like to then go into like maybe what happened in the game, maybe some points, even if there's nothing that happened, just tell them about different situations or positioning. So with that, I think they have to be leaders, they have to be positive, and they got to be motivators, because that's going to keep the officials coming back for more. Don't get me wrong. I mean, there's going to be situations where there are going to be tough games and tough situations, but that's where the leaders and the motivation is going to be in, because you might have to bring that official down and say, okay, you didn't do this well, but then bring that official back up and say, well, you did this and this well. So it's got to go hand in hand. And I think the biggest thing is you have to be a leader and you have to be positive in that situation.
Mike?
Yeah, well, I think this is perfect time to say, Dana, you are a mentor. You are a
Thank you.
mentor. When I met you in New Mexico, I mean, you're the type of person that is needed across this nation when you're dealing with officials, especially at the high school level, that know that you support them, but also know that, hey, you got to be responsible for your actions, right? When you write a report, like I've got to have a factual,
Please.
in order to stand up for you, right?
Well, thank you.
Yeah, so you're welcome. When I met you, and then I saw you in front of that group, I knew you were a mentor. So I think mentors are needed, especially in today's world. Man, we just need them for young officials at an early age. And that, as Doug said, that doesn't mean all the time just talking about officiating, right? Like if I need a mentor, I need a relationship. I need that person to like know me, like know my, just know me more than just an official, right? And I think that's where mentorship starts, like knowing, hey, this person kind of cares about me, right? That's we all need to be loved on, and that's kind of cool. This person cares. Now I watch him, I watch him on the field, or I watch him do a game, and then I see them work and I see them handle situations. So that's what I think a mentor looks like. But that one thing that later on in my career that I was told that I had a difficult time with was you cannot let the job define you. Like it, and to be quite honest, I did at times. It was pretty cool to be a major league umpire, but guess what? The season is over at some point, and then you become a father, you become a husband, you become whatever is going on in your life, and if you let that define you, things can go sideways. I can speak for that. I know that because it happened. And so I think a good mentor tells you that. You're not Mike Everitt, MLB umpire. You're not Doug Eddings, MLB umpire. You're Doug Eddings. You're Doug Eddings, a father. There's other things, and to make you realize that it's not life and death. Like, yes, we want to be perfect. The best officials in the world, I mean, they're so good, but the problem I see is it's so difficult in today's world to be wrong. And listen, I think that's another thing about being a mentor. You're human. You're going to make mistakes. You're not going to, you're going to get beat. Technology is going to beat you. Now, and I wasn't very good at getting flipped on the plays and calls, and now, they're being scrutinized to the nth degree on pitches, and they're announcing it. They're having to get up in front of the crowd and announce it, right? I kicked the call. I mean, that's hard.
It's nuts.
And so, the mental aspect of that, I don't know. Listen, honestly, sometimes I don't even know what I'm doing as a supervisor, but I do know one thing. I go in and I just hug it out and I say, man, you go get them tomorrow. You're the best at what you do, and do your best, and your best will do.
You made a couple points. Go ahead, Dana.
No, I was going to say, you were talking about how sometimes being a mentor is just about being that support and being the person to give a hug and to be just that kind of that. You gotta love on them. You said it, the people that love on the officials, because they don't get a lot of that. There have been times in my career where I've been kind of accused of, well, Dana, you're coddling the officials. And I'm like, I don't know that there's anything that's wrong with that, because they're a group of people, especially at our level, that sometimes they just need some love. My gosh. And I think that, you hit on that, and it made me feel good, because there's times where I'm like, well, maybe I did think, I've been doing things the wrong way for almost 30 years. So I appreciate you validating that. But it's the reality of it. It's talking about the good, the bad, and the ugly of officiating, of umpiring, and really just with these new officials coming in, talking to them about the kind of the reality of the toll it takes on your family, and the dedication that it takes, and some of the things that you're not even thinking about with when you sign up that you're not really anticipating. So I think that the X's and O's and evaluation, there's people who do that. There's people who are observers, evaluators, and supervisors, but sometimes a mentor, it's bigger than officiating. It's how officiating fits into life. And I really appreciate what you were saying, Mike. That resonated with me quite a bit.
Absolutely. And Dana's been that for me. Once I get my schedule, the first person that gets it other than my family is Dana, so she knows where I'm at all season long. But you brought up another point, and that's building the relationship with your mentee and mentor. It's unbelievable now. You go to these camps and you go to these trainings and people start throwing the question, well, who's your mentor? I don't have one. So then, you have these newer officials that just go up to random, crew chiefs and experienced officials and hey, will you be my mentor? Well, it's not quite how that works. You kind of have to build that relationship. I know that there's a person in my life that's, been a huge part of my officiating career. And I don't know if I've ever asked that person if they're my mentor. Doug, I remember when you went from Doug Eddings, the umpire, to Doug Eddings, Margarita's husband, behind the bench at Mayfield.
Yeah, it was tough.
Yeah. No, you know what? Hey, she was yelling and you were just kind of sitting there hanging out.
Boy.
I laugh about it with her.
And to watch George, just, how George is. But yeah, I mean, that's funny with that. But like what Mike was saying and Dana and you guys, like, you're not going to keep officials if you don't mentor them, if you don't like let them know that they're doing a good job. Even maybe if they're not, because they're just starting and they just haven't got to the level where they need to be. And, you just got to pump them up, because then you're going to be losing them because, they're going to be so down on themselves and not enjoying the job and not enjoy officiating. And you should enjoy it. Like, yeah, you're out there. You're not, like I always tell people, I wasn't out there for the money. I mean, I really started that way, but, high school and football and high school basketball and stuff like that. I mean, you didn't make much, but you enjoyed it, and it was hand in hand.
One of the things that we talk a lot about is there's a lot of people who say, oh, I want to be a mentor, that I don't know if they should be. I mean, honestly, there are people who have said, I really want to be a mentor, but then you look at the way they do things and the way they treat people, and it's just like, I don't know. And it's hard to tell somebody, yeah, you shouldn't be a mentor, but it takes a special breed of people, because there's a lot of selflessness involved. I mean, you've got to want to give to that person, go to their games and help them out. So when there are people who say they want to mentor, I don't know if they know what they're signing up for sometimes.
Well, and definitely when that's the case too, is just, you got to care about what you're doing.
Yes.
Like Mike said, I mean, he's in a different aspect of his life right now as a supervisor, but I really enjoy what I do. Like, I don't enjoy leaving my family. I really don't enjoy getting in a hotel every 3 days or a plane every 3 days. But once I get to the ballpark and once I start getting my uniform on, I really enjoy that. And I enjoy all aspects of that. And I love it. And as far as being a mentor, you got to love what you're doing and take it by the horns and just go in and care for people. And like you said, Dana, some people aren't meant to be mentors. They might be good officials, but as far as sharing what they have, maybe not so much right now. So it goes hand in hand.
And with that, you have to want to also bring the next person up. And there's a lot of officials out there that truly, kind of selfish, and I don't know if they truly want that. And like you said, they're very good officials and they're very good at what they do, but they really are just there to kind of work their games, make their money, and get in, get out, and those are the people that we don't want as mentors. And that's okay, because they're needed. I mean, obviously
Absolutely.
we need them, but definitely don't mentor somebody if your head's not in it.
Definitely.
All right, you're
All right.
up, Nate.
At what point in your careers did you realize that you were moving into the role of being a mentor for someone else? Mike, we'll start with you.
There's times where you don't even know it until later on, right? I think it's as you develop and you mature, and not only as a person, but as an official, right? And so I guess I guess it started as far back as like even when I was 18 working with a 14-year-old, right? Not even knowing it, trying to help that 14-year-old. But then as you go to get in the minor leagues, then as Doug alluded to earlier, about the seniority aspect, you have a crew chief. You have now at the big league level, you have a 2-man that's very important, a three person and the 4-person on the crew. Listen, I guess my answer is sometimes you don't even know it, but then I just think, each person develops at a different rate, and as you guys have spoke on, some people are just wired for that and leading. So, from my aspect, I think, as I was getting older and I remember becoming a 2-umpire assistant, the crew chief said, "These are your jobs, and this is what I want you to do, man. You're doing the hotel reservations, and you have the 3 guy do the cars, and I mean, he was mentoring in a different way, but we had to have that in order for the whole crew to survive the year, right? And so, and then I'll never forget, being a two or even 3, and the crew chief going, "Come on, come with me." Where are we going? Well, we're going to go over, because we're in a rain situation. We're going to go over to the room and meet with the GMs, and we're going to have to make a decision on whether we're going to play this game or not. And watching him maneuver through things and give his opinion on the weather, and having to deal with people who want the game, because it's the gate money, but if the game's already started, you having to make that decision. That kind of valuable experience, working through a rain situation on the field with somebody, that's and then working through situations with conflict resolution, like knowing when to come in, knowing when to let a younger umpire, or let that umpire handle the situation. I was not very good at that, to be quite honest. I wanted to rush in and protect the younger umpire, and then when you do that, you don't let that official develop. You got to know when to come in. You got to know how to let that go. So that's kind of what I have on that.
And Doug?
Mike hit it on the head, I think. And I guess this is why we're having this podcast. I guess this is why hopefully officials will hear this podcast, that they've always been mentoring for the most part, even if they didn't know it. And like Mike said, when we're younger through the minor leagues, I look back at like when going to instruction leagues in AA, when you're a crew chief down there, you're always mentoring. You're always talking about like the game, or talking to somebody not about the game, about how do you live to be in the profession. And like Mike alluded to before with being a major league umpire, how you conduct yourself off the field. I've had a lot of umpires, just that's important to them, like how you represent yourself getting on an airplane, the way you dress, the way you don't dress. There's different ways. So I think this, again, being a mentor, I think is about life. Sometimes it's about talking to your either younger or even older officials about situations. Talking about maybe not bad situations. How do we handle them in the future, and how do we get them better? That's just a process of being that way. But I think being a mentor, and if someone heard this podcast and say, you know what, I'm a mentor, and they should really take it and run with it, and get as many officials and be that person. If people aren't receptive, go on to the other people, and be that person that you can share your knowledge. Even if you don't think you are sharing, people want to hear your stories and want to hear your situations, because even if there are bad situations, you know what, you can turn that in the next time someone has a bad situation, turn it into something good and make it positive. Like Nate was saying, like, if people feel comfortable around you and people feel like they're comfortable when a bad situation arises, well, then they're going to think, hey, we can handle this. So I think we all are mentors in one shape or form. And I think we just need to be that way.
Yeah, and I don't think that there's actually a timeline for mentorship. I think you just said that. I mean, I'm in that transition phase right now in my career where, it's funny because I receive a ton of calls from, small college officials and high school officials, and I'm answering questions. Well, the next night I'm asking the exact same questions, just at a different, in a different situation. And so that mentorship never stops, and being a mentee and a mentor never stops. And so it's kind of really cool to hear you guys talk about that.
And I think it's interesting because I look at like the relationship Nate and I have. He says that I'm his mentor, but he's mentored me in more ways than I can even tell him. So I think that sometimes you can be both within the same two-person relationship and you don't even realize that it's happening, but it's just that process of learning from one another and drawing from each other's strengths. And really, you kind of don't realize it in the moment, but then you step back and you're like, wait a minute, now the student has become the teacher. And it's always fun when that happens, because now the shoe's on the other foot, and it's how you grow. It's how the avocation or the profession of officiating grows as well, is because of that, because we're learning from each other and learning together. So we had asked a question earlier to both of you that we're going to ask on the flip side. And that is, what is the most important piece of advice you've ever given to your mentee or mentees? Doug, we'll start with you this time.
Well, I kind of hit it on the head. Like, I think be yourself, be the person you want to be. I think when I with younger umpires, or even people want to talk about umpiring or off the field, I just, after 36 years of being in professional baseball, I have a lot to give, a lot of do's and don'ts. So, a lot of that is I just like to share, like, just how to live the life of a major league umpire, especially with these young umpires that, don't have very many years in the major leagues. And I don't think they get enough of that. I'm talking about just how you should live. And I'm not saying how you should live Doug Eddings' way, but the right way to be a major league umpire. And like Mike said, to be a major league umpire, to represent yourself and represent the MLB the way that it should be, and go from there.
And Mike?
Yeah, I'm just, now that I'm in the stage of where I am, I'm just I pound on this a lot. I just encourage people to stay off social media, number one. Number two, I just think you have to be humble. You have to think about all the times, if we really think the times when you really learn is after you make a mistake, right? I can think of couple embarrassing times on the field that I went, man, that's not going to ever happen again. And so now, I'm out on the field in my later career, and I was talking to myself, verbal cues, just reminding myself of possibly, what might happen in this situation. So put my guard up for it not to happen. And then, the fact that it goes by in a blink of an eye. So you have to try to enjoy every season, every game, every inning, and you have to. And the other really big thing is like, there are going to be days where, as much as you love it, you got life things going on. You got things, families going on, and you don't feel like putting those plate shoes on. And then, you might be tired, you might be injured, and your feet are heavy. Those are the real times where you've got to go out and bust it. And you've got to work with joy. And I will tell you this, there are very few people that I can see that, you got to work the same in March during spring training as you do in October postseason. And Doug is a prime example of that. Here's a guy who, I mean, my goodness, if I was going to say who loves their job, this guy loves his job, and he does it with energy, and he's the same if you look at him, he has not changed his energy, his strike call, everything is the same, right? So I would just say, I would also say it's important to be yourself, but also listen, you got to be flexible. And I'm not talking physically. I'm talking, you got to be able flexible to be able to change. The game changes. The game has changed so much since Doug and I first got into this game. And if you don't change with it a little bit, it's going to run you over. It just is. The train, you need to hop on the train. You need to be yourself. You need to voice your opinion at times, but the train has left the station. And if you don't jump on, it's going to run you over.
All right, so to kind of close out, we have a mission here with the From A to Zebra podcast every week, and that is to educate, elevate, and excite. Doug, what is something that you can tell our audience about umpiring that would excite current and potential officials?
I think a lifelong umpire can say just to see the joy in like I can see the joy in the kid. Like when I was doing, little league and high school, and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed that aspect. I really didn't enjoy their parents because we all know the parents are the worst. But seeing the kids enjoy the game and now at the major league level, I really enjoy seeing the fans interacting, like seeing the kids just enjoy it. A lot of times, if I get a baseball, I'll walk over to the line and I'll hand the kid a baseball and I'll tell him, I said, I'm going to give you this baseball, but you got to make me a deal. And they kind of look up at me and they're like, what? Say, okay. I'm like, okay, if I give you this baseball, you can't ever yell at an umpire ever again. And their parents usually laugh, but just seeing the joy of them getting a baseball and like them enjoying the game, I really enjoy that. My joy is my profession. Like Mike said, I enjoy it. I enjoy going on the field still and trying to do the best of my abilities and at a high level. And one day, very fast, like Mike said, it's going to be very soon for me that I'll be retiring, and that will not happen anymore. But I'm not ready yet. But I still love to do what I do, and I guess that's just see the joy of I just enjoy the game of baseball.
And Mike, kind of on that educate, elevate, excite. So as part of the education piece, what is something you didn't know about umpiring before you started that you wish you would have known and that would really help others in the future?
Well, first of all, I'm a big acronym guy. So, I mean, I like this EEE, right? I like this educate, elevate, excite. Nice job by whoever came up with that.
That was Nate.
Good job, Nate.
In New Mexico, it's E.
It is E.
I was hoping you're going to say like Aggie, something like that, Nate. But yeah. So anyway, I guess what I wished I would have known, I keep on saying this. I wish I would have known how quick it went. Like, I wished I would have been able to take a step back at times and just go a seventh inning stretch and just go, man, look at this office. This is my office. I wish I would have been able to appreciate it at times more. And then going into my new role, the first time I went to a game, we watch it from the press box. And as an umpire, you get in the car, you go underground, you go to your locker room, and then you walk out, you do your game, you leave. You don't see the vendors, you don't see the people, how many people it takes to run a game. I mean, it's incredible. And then you see the view from a different aspect up high and see this beautiful stadium. And then you see the speed of the game. And then I'm just blown away by the accuracy of our staff. And I'm like, man, I don't know if I could do this right now, what they're doing. I wish I would have realized that, you get so compartmentalized on your crew and you go work and it's just A, B, C, you go do it and move around each city. Man, there are a lot of people. It takes a lot of people to run those games. And whether it's a vendor or whether it's that parking attendant or whether it's, whatever somebody's job is, the media or whatever the job is up in that stadium. And I think it's very important to try to tell people, be appreciative, right? Be appreciative of what you're doing, even on the bad days. Because, man, if you look at it, if I was able to stand on that field sometimes and go, man, I am so blessed here. This is pretty cool office. And it's easy to take for granted. Right.
That is so true. It does. It goes by so quickly. Looking at my career, I'm like, oh my gosh, I've been doing this almost 30 years. I'm like, I'm only 30. So that's so weird. But you just have those moments where it just, you have such fond memories. And I really think all of us that are in this world, the good days do outweigh the bad. It's like we think about the bad a lot, but there's so much good in officiating. And so much of that is in the relationships. And certainly Doug and Mike, I appreciate your friendship and I appreciate you taking the time tonight to talk with us on the podcast. And thank you so much, Doug Eddings, Mike Everitt. Nate, any parting thoughts for our guests?
No, thank you guys. Doug, always look forward to that birthday text, birthday brother. And
Birthday brother.
It's birthday brother. And so, thank you guys. But for our listeners, thank you for joining us on another From A to Zebra podcast. Follow us on our socials. We've got X, Instagram, Facebook for all updates and information leading into our next episode. So with that, you guys have a good night.
Be sure to hit that like button, follow, subscribe, and also catch From A to Zebra on Instagram at from_A_2_zebra, Facebook From A to Zebra podcast, and on X at From A to Zebra.